Hello. Right. So this is your question for next week. So the situation is that we're going to do this Thursday, Friday. All right. So if you are sitting the exam, what you really need to do is prep for it Thursday and then write it in the hour on Friday, just to work on your timing. If you are not doing the exam, then you can take your time and you can write it over Thursday and Friday's class. So I hope that makes sense to you. But either way, this is what we're going to be working on Thursday, Friday. So I'm posting this now so that you can think about the question and maybe even write some of your ideas, but you don't have to actually take down some ideas, but you don't actually have to have it written out. We have 2 hours in class to do that, unless for some reason you're going to be out of class. And then maybe you'll get started on it. So this will be due when we are finished class on Friday. That's when it's due. So I hope that makes sense to you. But if you have any questions, just email or ask. So I just want to go through it with you. So you have your sample answer. And you can go through that and have a look at it at your leisure. But this is just maybe to give you some ideas for this. So give 2 pieces of evidence from the play to show that life is sometimes difficult for Gloucester. So this question isn't really asking you just to give 2 pieces of evidence. It's asking you to give the evidence and explain in detail why it makes life difficult for Gloucester, and then give another piece of evidence and explain how it shows that life is difficult for Gloucester. So there's plenty that you can pick from. Okay, so you could start off with the betrayal, Edmund's betrayal of Gloucester. So the fact that Edmund easily dupes, so the fact that he's so gullible is one of the things that makes his life difficult. He is easy to believe. He easily believes, sorry, Edmund. Um, he's too quick and rash and sudden to believe these accusations against Edgar, who is a loyal and loving son. He looks at the letter and listens to what Edmund is saying, and immediately acts without really thinking about the consequences. And banishes, he outlaws his own son, who then has to go into hiding. As we know, Edgar hides and disguises himself as a Bedlam beggar. So that might be one thing that you talk about, and you're going to have to do a bit of revision and make sure you read those scenes, and that you're able to write about it in detail. Another thing could be the fact that his loyalty to Lear gets him into a lot of trouble with Cornwall and Cordelia and Regan, and as we know, he has his eyes gouged out because of it. So again, looking at that, reading it, and writing an answer on it. So they are 2 that I would pick. There are more than that, but that's just for starters an idea. Okay, 2A, then another 10-mark question. So you have 3 10-mark questions, and then you pick 1 30-mark. Do you think that Lear has a mainly positive or a mainly negative impact on his daughter Cordelia? So I suppose let's think about that. He banishes her. He humiliates her. He doesn't give her a dowry. She's lucky that France is there, um, and is willing to take her on without a dowry and without her father's blessing. So France has the wherewithal to see that Lear is not being reasonable. So she's just very lucky. Um, so far it's quite negative, really, isn't it? She has to leave her country, she has to leave her family, and her father, who she loves. She comes back then to rescue him. She wages war on her own country, just out of love for her father, and to put him back into his rightful place. But ultimately she ends up dead, doesn't she? So she is killed. Um, and you would explain how that happens, and I suppose that's a negative impact on her life is cut short. So she acts out of love, but she wouldn't have had to do any of that if Lear hadn't have banished her in the first place, or tempted her to engage in the love test. So that is our second question. Okay, 2A. 2B then. Name a character from the play that disapproves of Lear's behaviour towards Cordelia. That's Kent. Okay. Explain why this character disapproves of Lear's behaviour. So again, looking at Kent and looking at Act 1, Scene 1, you really need to read that a few times. Make sure that you know it. Use No Fear Shakespeare if you need to. So the reasons why he disapproves of Lear's behaviour is he can see that Goneril and Regan, that that they are engaging in false flattery, that they're not to be trusted. He doesn't believe a word that they are saying. He understands that they are acting not out of love but out of greed, and that they just want Lear's kingdom for themselves. And he can also see on the other side that Cordelia loves her father, that she's not engaging in the love test because she thinks it's so ridiculous, not because she doesn't love him. And Kent, um, Kent isn't judging Cordelia on this moment, this one moment. He's judging her on everything that he's seen of her for her whole life, whereas Lear seems to have temporarily forgotten that. So Kent is really trying to protect Cordelia and protect Lear from himself. So that is why he disapproves of Lear's behaviour, and that is why he's willing to risk his own reputation and his own life, because Lear could have him executed by standing up to Lear, which he does in Act 1, Scene 1. Now, he's not executed, but he is banished. So if he returns, he's exiled, he's banished. If he returns, he will be executed. But he is that sure and of Cordelia's love and her true nature that he is willing to do that. So that is Kent. So that's going to be 2B. Again, look up, read more, go over your Act 1, Scene 1. Make sure you have a few quotes in there to make it even better. So then we have the third question. Okay, so you pick one of these. In the sample answer, you just saw one, and that was on Cordelia and Regan. So let's have a look at them. Loyalty is important in the play King Lear. Now, when we were doing our prep on the jam boards, we did loyalty as a theme. So have a look at the jam board. If you want to do this one, look at the jam board, look at all the points, and take them. Do a little introduction, say why it's important. It is important. Loyalty is important. So we see Kent's loyalty, which we've just mentioned. We see Edgar's loyalty to Gloucester and Cordelia's loyalty to Lear. And it's an extremely important theme throughout the play. So they'd be the three people that you talk about really in that in your essay. Sorry. So you introduce it. Agree with the statement, state the characters who you're going to talk about the three characters, and do a conclusion. So that's how you'd approach that one. Your second one then, guys, is you've been asked to recommend a play to be performed by the TY class in your school. Explain why you would or would not recommend King Lear for this purpose. So I would always recommend it, okay, because it's easier to agree with it and recommend it. So looking for, say, again, 3 points, fully explained as to why, 3 or 4 points as to why we might recommend it. And it has to demonstrate knowledge of the play. So why would we recommend this? Well, it talks about themes that are universal themes that are still relevant to us today. So themes such as family, love, loyalty, these are all certainly very relevant. And also greed. We have the greed of Goneril and Regan. So you could do a paragraph on each of those, or that's probably a bit much. You might take 2 of those and explain them. Now, you can't just say the 4 of them. Well, you could just sort of state the 4 of them and do a summary of them in the paragraph, but you're not going to get great marks for that. So you have to refer to key moments. You have to explain why those themes would make it so appealing. And then what I would definitely do is I would focus on the dramatic scenes in the play. Like, there are really exciting scenes in the play that are tense and would be very interesting for an audience to watch. So I would, for example, talk about the scene between Edgar and Gloucester, where he pretends to jump off the cliff, the scene where Gloucester has his eyes gouged out as well, and the first scene, of course. Now, remember, do it chronologically. I've actually gone backwards there. So you would go the first scene where Cordelia and Kent are banished is an exciting one. Then Gloucester getting his eyes gouged out, and then Edgar helping Gloucester by tricking him into believing that he's jumping off a cliff. So, and of course, the final scene as well, very poignant and emotional scenes when King Lear is so devastated by Cordelia's death that he himself he dies of a broken heart. And then we have Kent, who is willing to, who states that he is going to go on his journey after his master, which suggests that he himself is going to die. Now that Lear is dead, he's going to follow him to the afterlife. So there's really powerful scenes that make it very interesting. The other thing that makes it interesting are intriguing characters. And for me, I think I'd have to have Edmund in there, So decide the 3 or 4 paragraphs, the 3 or 4 points you're going to write on that would make it such an appealing play to put on, to be performed by transition year in your school, and then and explain each point fully. Okay, so remember you're going aiming for about 2 pages, so it's a good bit of work. Or number 3, I think this one is definitely one Maria will do, but time will tell. So imagine that you are Cordelia's husband, the King of France. Write 2 diary entries, one dealing with your marriage to Cordelia. So that's Act 1, Scene 1, guys. That is what happens. Like, he'd be talking about what happened, how he ends up proposing to Cordelia, how Lear was treating Cordelia. So that's Act 1, Scene 1, okay? And another giving your reaction to her death. So in that one, you need to again try to refer to the play. So you'd state things like, that ultimately you're going to have some anger, because ultimately she's dead because she waged war with his army. Obviously, he's the King of France. She waged war in England to try to right the wrongs of her sisters, to rescue her father, and she says she does it out of love. Like, that's her reason for doing it, not greed. She doesn't want land, it's just love. She wants her father to be reinstated, and she's heard through Kent what he's been subjected to. So it is her love for her father that gets her killed. You wonder how France will feel about that. And the fact also then that you'll make reference to the fact that Lear has died too. Surely he'll be devastated by it. You need to make reference to Edmund, because it's Edmund, remember, who is the one who orchestrates the death of Lear and Cordelia when they're being held prisoner. So just make sure that you are speaking as you believe France would speak, so trying to use his voice, but also that you're making as much reference to the play, showing off that you really know what the play is about. Because if it's too vague, you'll get marks, but you won't get high marks. Okay, you need to show that you know what the play is about. So hopefully that helps you to plan, and you understand what we're going to do. So it's this question you'll be doing on Thursday and Friday. But if you have any other questions, so if you're still not sure exactly what I'm talking about, or you're not sure how to approach something, or you're planning or studying over the next few days, and you need a bit of direction, then just email me and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Okay, best of luck.